All right, I think so we've got everything set. We can start the session now. All right, so today's session is on Kepler's law, right? So I have no idea how to approach this, but let's try it anyway. Um, let's start with the Kepler's law. Like, how many of you all know what Kepler's law are?
According to me, like Kepler's law describes the planetary motion.
How many laws were there?
Three laws.
Three laws? Okay, let's go with the first law. Which is the first law?
The first law states that the law of orbits and there is a focus between the orbits. It's elliptical and there are two focus.
Orbits are elliptical. Elliptical. Okay, and the second one?
The second one tells us that the shortest line joining the planet and the sun sweeps equal areas in equal time.
So, equal areas is the second law. And then p square and r cube
T square and R cube is
proportional to
constant.
each other.
Like they're related.
Yeah. Now I want you all to forget the laws for now and think about like how Kepler might have come across these laws in the first place. So let's start by just like playing the making a sun over here. So we will have an ellipse. So this will represent our sun. This will represent the orbit, let's say, of any planet. And let's go with this. This will represent the Earth. Okay. Now, the first law basically says that the orbits are elliptical. And I want you all to think about like how would someone come across such a law, because your observation that you're doing is within the frame of reference itself. So what I mean is what you see inside the inner circle which I'm drawing over here represents the orbit of, let's say, it's Earth. Okay, let's give Earth a better color. Let's give it green in color because there's plants over here. Okay. This represents Earth. The outer circle represents some other planet. And imagine trying to measure the position of such a planet from a moving frame of reference. How would you go about doing it? What would you expect? And how would that look from planet Earth when you're actually looking at such a system?
Possibly we could see some retrograde motion in superior planets.
Retrograde motion in some superior planets. So first of all, I don't know what each of those terms means. Like I said, I'm more into physics, not into astronomy. But retrograde, I'm assuming that you can see the planets moving backwards, right? Uh,
Yes, yes.
yeah. So what you have is over here, this would be the sun. This is the top view. What I showed you before was the side view. That's the second orbit over there. We are looking at a certain positions. So let's say this is one of the position that we will look at. Let's say the blue planet represents Jupiter, the green planet represents Earth. Now, from your point of view, this will represent day side, this will represent night side. Okay, so anyone on the night side looking straight up, okay, looking straight up, if you like just stand and look straight up into the sky at midnight, which is like 12:00 hours, you will see Jupiter right above, okay, straight above. We are assuming that all the planets are going in the same plane and the Earth is not tilted, okay? There are like some assumptions which are over there. Now I want you to think the Earth goes around the entire orbit once and comes back to the same position over here. This is after 365 days. Okay, so after 365 days, okay, again at the same time at 0.00 hours. All right. So Earth will actually complete one single orbit after 365 days, but where will Jupiter be? Jupiter is not going to move much. Okay, Jupiter is farther away. So, and I'm exaggerating over here, so I don't know exactly how much time Jupiter takes and all. But what we can say is because Jupiter is further away, you will not see the Jupiter in the same place. It will not travel as much. It might just travel up to here. Okay, so this time, if anyone is standing on Earth, they will be looking at Jupiter at a certain angle. So at midnight, if you're looking straight up, you will not see Jupiter straight up, you will see Jupiter at a certain angle. For example, if you have this plane, right? Let's say this, you're looking at east. So this part, like this place is east, you're facing east. Okay, this top part represents straight above, right? No, what do you call it? Overhead. Okay, on the first night you will see that Jupiter is over here. After 1 year you will see that Jupiter is over here. Furthermore, after another year you will see Jupiter over here. You'll see Jupiter kind of moving through the sky after a few amount of like a few days. Now not only that, you also need to know not just which direction Jupiter is, but how far Jupiter would be. So Earth is over here, Jupiter is over here. We know Jupiter is overhead in the first measurement, but how do you know if Jupiter is close by or whether it's further away? How would you do that? How would you know that? What kind of techniques would you use to figure out where Jupiter is? Remember, at the end, what we want is a map of Jupiter. Like someone on Earth needs to be able to say that we have a position of Jupiter. So this is your x and y coordinate. So to say, you will use a spherical polar coordinate because everything is going in circles. But even if you say x and y coordinate, you're going to start plotting the position of Jupiter, and you should be noticing something like a circle. What kind of measurements will you do to get this particular elliptical?
What is the question?
How will you measure the position of Jupiter first? Remember, Kepler came out with his three laws. We are talking about the motivation that actually kept that got Kepler to get these laws. We are looking at first elliptical. Okay, this is the first law that we are looking at right now. Okay, that orbits are elliptical. We want to figure out how did Kepler come up with that law. So what must have he done to think about this law, to come across this law? Okay, that's the first law that he said, that orbits are ellipses. They're not circles, they're elliptical. And remember, not just that, that's a huge thing. Copernicus said that the orbits are circles, Kepler said they are elliptical before Copernicus. We thought that the Earth is in the center of everything, and the planet Jupiter had an orbit that did this. If you actually measured and plotted the orbits did this, I want you to think about why that was happening. Okay. How would you go from looking at the sky to getting an ellipse? So, observation of Jupiter to ellipses. I want anyone to just like try and answer this question.
The distance in respect to the sun.
Yes, distance with respect to sun is what you will look at first. First, you're going to keep sun at some position and then talk about where Jupiter is from with respect to sun, which means even if Earth is, let's say, over here, and you look at Jupiter in that particular direction, there is Jupiter over here, this is Jupiter over here. This is not what you're going to plot on the graph. You need to plot something like this. Where is Jupiter from with respect to Sun, and how far with respect to Sun is Jupiter? Okay, but you need to do that observation from Earth. Think about these problems, okay? Like how would you go about solving this? Your measurements you can only do from Earth. Let's look at the simplest one, like how would you measure Jupiter's distance from the Earth?
From the Earth or from the sun?
From the Earth. Let's start with Earth because you're on the Earth, you're doing a measurement from the Earth. You need to find the distance of Jupiter from Earth. Once you do that, the second problem is quite easy. This is during Kepler's time. We are talking about 1500s to 1600s. This is about 400, 500 years ago. All right. So during that time, we were actually measuring distance of Jupiter by angle and radius of Jupiter. Manas, you'll have to give me more explanation on that, like that is just a small statement. If you can triangle, again, y'all are just shooting words. By using simple
Can't you use
trigonometry,
geometry?
you can use trigonometry, and Rohit actually, is that Rohit or Rohil? Rohit actually said parallax. Okay, so you can use trigonometry, you can actually use parallax to find how far Jupiter is from the Earth. Okay, so use the parallax method to find how far Jupiter is from the Earth. Now, for those of y'all who don't know what parallax method is, let's have a refresher on that. Okay, this is the top view on a football court. This is just a random line which I drew from the center of this line somewhere over here. Okay, so we have a football over here on the football court, and we want to know how far from the goal post that football is over here. So what you can do is you can walk a few steps to the left and measure how far the football is, like what angle does it make. You can use a protractor and figure out what angle this is over here. Okay, you can walk a few steps to the right, find out what angle does this make. They should be equal angle because like the football is right across the goal post, and you need to select this position A and position B in such a way that position C is right in front of position D. So you have this angle ADC. This makes a triangle. Triangle ADC is a triangle. Okay, you know that this is 90 degrees. What we can do is we can measure the distance AB, length of AB, that is known. Okay, that is a given length, call it capital L. Okay, which also means that length of AB is half that length, L by 2. Okay, so this much is L by 2, this we know. Okay, what we need is capital D. Actually, capital D is not a good idea. Let's use displacement, S. Now, if you notice, using trigonometry, sine of theta will be opposite S divided by L by 2. Okay. What we want is S, we will make S the subject, and we will get L by, sorry, not sine of theta, tan of theta. What am I saying? Tan of theta. So S will be equal to L by 2 tan theta. Theta we can measure because that's what we are doing over here. L, we can decide how far we are walking. And once we know what L is and what theta is, we can actually find out how far the football is, even without using a ruler or going to the football. Okay, but you can use the same principles to find out how far planets are. All right, so in this case, what you can do is at evening, somewhere at 6 o'clock, you will say where Jupiter is. In the mornings, in the evening, and early morning, we can see where the Jupiter is. You will kind of get an angle in the direction where Jupiter would be. If you magnify into this, you will get the same triangle problem. So an observation from evening, an observation from early morning. Okay, A to B in this case would be the diameter of Earth. That we know the diameter of Earth, it will be how much? 12800 kilometers. That's something that is known, and that's something that we can actually find out also. So just by looking at the angle that Jupiter makes at midnight, by making angle that Jupiter makes in the evening and in the morning, two measurements, we can tell how far Jupiter is. That's one vague method. That there might be better methods of actually finding out how far Jupiter is. All right. Just by finding the length between A and B, we can find the angle at C, right? Yes, you can. So just by finding the angle and a length of AB, you can find the angle at C. All right. There are multiple variations of the parallax method, but all of them use the same principles that by finding out one angle of the triangle, you can find out how far the distance of C is. Okay. So what we were looking at, we wanted to find out how far Jupiter is. This problem is solved. How far Jupiter is from the Earth. So this problem is solved. We also have given Earth's distance from the Sun a specific value. We call that 1 astronomical unit. This is the distance of Earth from Sun. Alright, so this distance is 1 astronomical unit. Okay, and we can tell where Jupiter is, and as you can see, this forms a triangle over here. All right, now my question is, if you have a triangle, this is Sun, this is Earth, and this is Jupiter. We have found out the distance of Earth to Jupiter. That is S. Okay, your displacement, which we had used in the trigonometry over here. Okay, we have found that out. We have told that the value S to E is 1 astronomical unit. Okay, we also know this particular angle, whatever that angle could be, I'm going to call it phi because theta was used before. Can I find out what this distance would be? Okay, and can I find out what this angle would be over here?
Yes, we can find.
Okay, so I'm giving this as an exercise. It's not going to be an easy exercise, but think about it. Once we know two sides, L1 and L2, and also this angle, everything about this triangle gets fixed. Okay, your theta 1 or the phi 2, I'll call this phi 1. Phi 1, phi 2, and phi 3 all gets fixed. Okay, L1, L2, and L3 all gets fixed. So using similarity of triangles and whatnot methods that you might have at your disposal, you can always find out how far Jupiter is from the Sun and at what angle. Which means in your graph over here, let's say we have plotted the Sun over here, we know where Earth is, okay, and you know from Earth where Jupiter is, so we can tell like, okay, this is the Sun, Jupiter will be over here. Okay, make a measurement after a few more months, Jupiter will be over here. Going forward, so forth and so on and so forth, you will notice that this line that Jupiter traces is not a circle. Okay, it's very close to a circle, but it won't be a circle. Okay, it's going to be an ellipse. Okay, now ellipse is very easy to draw. For those of you who have never drawn an ellipse, what you can do is you can take a paper, place it on a wooden board maybe, put a pin at 2 points. This is your first focus, this is your second focus. Put a thread, so take a loop of thread, tie it, put the thread around these two pins. Okay, and then put your pen through the pin and pull the thread. So whatever this thread is, now this is a thread going around pin 1, which is a focal point 1, pin 2 is a focus point 2, and this is your pen. And as you move your pen around, you're going to get an elliptical shape. Okay, this came like a potato, but remember, this will be an elliptical shape. All right. What the first law says that the shape of the orbit is elliptical. Okay, that's what the first law says. Now remember, when Kepler is actually marking the positions of this particular Jupiter, he will notice that if you're measuring the distance of the planets after 1 month, that when the planet is closer to the sun, that his positions are moving much faster away from each other. Okay, but when the planet is away from the sun, after each month, these positions are much more closer to each other, which means when the planet is moving further away from the sun, when the planet is far from the sun, that the planet is moving slow. And when the planet is closer to the sun, the planet is actually moving faster. Okay, so you're getting it. So this is position 1, position 2, position 3 in month 1, month 2, month 3, but the planet is closer to the sun. Okay, but when he's measuring the same position of the planet, they are much more bunched up closer to each other. That means that the planets, when they're further away from the sun, they're moving a lot more slower. Everyone with me so far? Can you all hear me, or am I just...
Yes. Can I ask a question?
Yes, 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 ask a question.
All exoplanets are also in elliptical orbit.
Yes, so every time you find a planet going around, or not just planet, if you find any object going around in an orbit around another object. So you have object 1, your parent object, and you have an object 2 that goes around the orbit 1. Those orbits are all elliptical orbit. Remember, circle is also a special case. It's also an ellipse. So will you find a planet going in a circular orbit? Could be. There are so many planets out there. You can easily find a planet which is going in a perfect circular orbit. But it's rare. Okay. More often than not, you will always see elliptical orbits. Elliptical orbits are the more general case. All right.
I have
So,
a question.
yes.
Is this what is the cause for this elliptical orbits for this all planetary motions and all objective motion?
Piyush, I think so. Like in the last talk, we had discussed this, why it has a elliptical orbit. Okay, but I
Yes.
will just go through it quickly. That if this is your planet, let's say Earth, and this is your moon, okay, the moon, let's say it goes in a perfect circular orbit over here. Okay, in order to go in a perfect circular orbit, it requires something called as a critical velocity. If the moon does not have that velocity, it will fall towards the Earth. Okay, and when it falls towards the Earth, it enters a new orbit whose critical velocity is much more less. So the moon might start with a critical velocity, as an example, let's say 11 kilometers per second. Okay, or that's what is needed over here. But the moon is traveling less than 11 kilometers, it'll fall down to the second orbit. So the critical velocity of this orbit might be 7 kilometers per second. And when it reaches this point, the moon has gained more kinetic energy. It's falling towards the earth, right? So it gained more kinetic energy. And now the velocity of the moon is higher, so it gets slingshotted outwards. So instead of having a circular orbit, it does this. It keeps on bouncing between two orbits, giving that elliptical nature for the moon. That's the simplest answer I can give you, but there are much more. If you use Lagrangian mechanics and stuff, these things come out naturally. Okay, that elliptical orbit just comes out naturally from the equations of motions. All right. So, okay, that's the first one. We got orbits are elliptical, and from the speed, we still don't know how Kepler came with this particular idea of equal areas. Okay, what that means is that if a planet is traveling from point A, it's going to sweep a certain distance. Let's say this is 1 month. Okay, you all got that? So this is the sun, the planet is over here, and we are going to look at the planet. We're going to follow the planet for 1 month, and this planet is going to trace out one area like this, like so. Okay, and after 1 month, the planet traces out this much area. Okay, what you will notice is at any other point in time, when the planet is over here, the planet is traveling much more slower. So in 1 month, it is not going to trace out a large area. Okay, that's the only area it will trace out. Okay, but turns out if you do the calculation over here, if you do the calculation, this area over here, A1, and this area over here, A2, area A1, area A1 will be equal to area A2. And it doesn't have to be these two, okay? You can take any other point in space as well. So if you take this planet, this point over here, wait for 1 month, it's going to trace another area. Okay, this will be area A3. Okay, so area A1 will be equal to area A2 is equal to area A3. Remember, we are waiting for exactly the fixed amount of time. So it takes 1 month for the planet to go from, let's say, A3 to B3, A1 to B1, and this is A2 to B2. Okay, so it takes the same amount of time. So what Kepler did was, looking at this data that he has of where Jupiter's position is, he measured the area that Jupiter traces at the sun. And he said that for equal time periods, all planet trace, not all planet, the planet will trace equal areas. That's what the equal area laws basically says that. So for 1 month, whatever area the planet will trace over here, it will be the same amount of area the planet will trace over here. Is this clear?
Yes.
Okay. This is very simple to understand visually, but it's very difficult to prove because measuring area or ellipses is it's a daunting task. It was only after Newton introduced calculus that you can actually do these kind of calculation, but Kepler did it without calculus. Okay, he did not use any kind of high fundu maths to actually try this or prove this. Literally, he might have actually plotted the area using a graph paper or something and then come up with the uh, solution. The last one, t square is equal to r cube. Now, what did Kepler do is, this is just a plot for Jupiter, right? You can also have a plot for Saturn. You can have a plot for Mars. You have different plots for different planets that are going around the sun. Now, this is the second thing. Once we have these plots, we can always make a table where we have the distance from the sun and the time taken. This will be your radius and this will be your time period for the orbit. How much time does it take for a planet to go around the orbit? And you will get planet 1's distance is r1, time is t1, r2, time is t2, r3, time is t3. So you will get different just from plotting and finding out how much time Jupiter takes to come back to the same position. How much time does Mars take to come back to the same position? You already have the distance over here. So this data you have already plotted. So can someone tell me the distance of different planets and their time period? You know what? Don't say that. We will just go on Wikipedia and search. Time period of orbits planets. So let's stop sharing. I'm going to present this tab over here. Can you see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is the data that you
Sir,
have.
I wanna ask you.
Yeah.
We have to measure distance from Earth, right?
No. We are measuring the distance
Or
from.
I mean,
We are measuring the distance from the sun.
sun.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay. All
okay,
these distances are from the sun. Once we measure the distance from Earth, we know how far Earth is from the sun. We can tell how far the object is from the sun using the triangle, like properties of the triangle. We can always find this out. Okay. All right. Notice what we have over here. We have the number of days. Hold on, where it went? Yeah. Okay. How many days that, or how many years that a planet takes to go around the sun? Earth obviously takes 1 year. Mars will take a little more than that, 1.18 years. Jupiter will take 11.86 years. This is Earth years, okay? And what we can do next is we can always talk about the radius of orbit of planets. That's another thing that we can look at. Now, where did the radius of planet, orbits of planet go? Okay. Apparently, there is a whole website over here. So as you can see over here, there is an orbital radius in AU. 1 AU means the distance of Earth from the Sun. 0.72 means 72% the distance to Earth. So Venus is at 72% distance to the Earth, and it takes 0.6 years for Venus to go around the planet. So once we have this data, forget this part. Okay, you have this data. Now that we know that t square is proportional to r cube, we can directly plot that out. It's almost close to 1. Okay, but my question is, how did we know that t square is proportional to r cube? You have a set of data. How do we know what the proportionality constant actually is?
Please repeat.
So let's say we have some data over here, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Okay, and then we have the time period or some other data over here. We will have this is as 5. This can be 17, this will be 37, this will be 65, and this will be 101. So how do we know there's a relationship between these two? How would you do that? And I'm giving you some random set. I know there is a correlation between them. So when you draw a graph, it will give you some kind of a curve. Maybe this curve, maybe this curve, maybe you will get some kind of wavy curve. But what is the exact correlation? How would you do that? Imagine you're doing an experiment. It doesn't have to be the planetary motion. You're trying to figure out um, how much time it takes for an object to hit the ground once you release it. So you're dropping it from different heights and you're measuring the time it takes to hit the ground. So you're releasing it from half a meter, 1 meter, 1.5 meter, 2 meter, and then you're measuring the time in milliseconds. So this might take 1 millisecond, this might take 1.3 millisecond, this might take 1.7 millisecond. How would you know, what kind of graph would you draw to find out the relationship between these two? This is definitely going to give you something like that. Anyone? I want you all to guess. I'm not asking for the right answer.
Proportionality.
Proportionality will give you a direct proportionality will give you a straight line. Okay. We know Kepler's law says that t square is proportional to r cube. We know that. Okay. How do we know that it's not t square is proportional to r raised to 7? How we know that like t raised to like square root of t is proportional to r raised to 5? How do we know that this is not the relation? This is not the relation. This is the relationship. You only have data to
By
work with.
observation.
Hmm?
Trial and error.
No, trial and error will give you like so many different values.
By observation.
Observation gives you the data. Data you need to analyze now. We need to, what would the method of analysis be? Okay. Can anyone tell me what's the time period of a pendulum? What's the formula for that? Time period of a pendulum is equal to what? 2 pi root of L over G, right? Something like that.
Hello,
Yes.
sir. Can I tell you something?
Tell me, tell me.
Sir, actually, I am studying in grade 6th. That's why I don't know the basics.
That's fine,
So,
that's fine. You just take whatever you can understand and like rest of that you just keep it on the side. Whenever you will need it, you can use it. Okay?
okay,
All
sir.
right. Don't worry about it. I know that like whatever I'm speaking right now, many of them are in grade 12, even they might not be understanding. This is a basic
Okay,
stuff.
I have the formula of time period and it was equals to 2 pi under root LG.
Yeah, 2 pi under
And
root L
L
over
by
G. Okay. So for those who are not understanding, so here's the thing. If you have a pendulum, you take a pendulum to the side and make it swing, it is going to take some time for the pendulum to go from left to right and then right to left. That's the time period. And if the pendulum is 1 meter, the time period will be 2 seconds. If the pendulum is 2 meters, it will have some other time. I don't know what it is, but it might be 3.4 seconds. Pendulum is 3 meters, it will have some 4.7 seconds. Okay. Now, this formula we know from calculus and all that stuff. If we don't have this, how do we know that the time period of a pendulum is proportional to root of L? How would you know this?
By comparing the values.
The comparison of values will be maybe that's one way of doing it. But what if it is root of L plus some error? Then that becomes much more, that becomes an issue over there. Okay. So, if anytime you have a graph like this, remember, this is what you do. You have your first variable, right? In this case, it's a time for the planets to go around the sun. This is your second variable, which is your radius of the planet. So if this is x and this is y, what you will do is you're going to take log of variable 1. They'll give you log x. 6th standard student, you will learn about logs when you learn about logs. It will come in grade 8 or grade 9. I don't know when it comes, I forgot. Okay, so this will be log of y. So if this is, I don't know, 2 and your y value is 3, log of x, if you look at the log table, you'll get 0.3010, log of 3 is 0.712 something, I don't remember. Okay. And if you do the log of distances r and distances t, you will get a straight line. You will get a straight line. Okay. Now, let me go to Kepler's third law. Kepler's third law basically says that t square is proportional to r cube. Okay, which means there's a constant k over there. We don't know what that constant is. Kepler did not know. Newton found that out. If I take log of both sides, I will get log of t square is equal to log of k into r cube. You simplify this, you will get 2 log t is equal to 3 log r plus log k. Okay. Notice that this is in the form, or let me just divide this by 2. Log t is equal to 3 by 2 log r plus 1 by 2 log k. Everyone is understanding this. This is it's just simple. So this is Kepler's third law, t square proportional to r cube. I just applied the log on both the sides. Okay. And can you all see now, this is y is equal to mx plus c. What is this?
Slope.
This is the slope. This is the slope. This equation is, what equation is this?
Linear equation.
Linear equation, it's an equation of a straight line. So if we plot log t and log r, okay, so if we plot this, instead of r and t, we take log t and log r. when we plot, we will get a few things. The plot will look something like this. Let me make a nice graph. The plot is going to look something like this. Okay, a straight line. So on y-axis, we are going to plot log r. On x-axis, we are going to plot log t. Okay, if you take the slope, which is rise, this, just make a triangle over here, right angle triangle, find out rise over run, y and x. So if we find the slope, y over x, you will notice that this slope will be 3 upon 2. That means r is raised to 3 and t is raised to 2. If you did this for the pendulum experiment, if you apply the pendulum experiment over here, so if you can do the same thing. T is equal to some constant k into square root of L. Take log on both the sides. You will take log of t is equal to log of L, which is 1 by 2, plus log of k. Okay, when you plot the graph over here, you will get log L on the y-axis, log t on the x-axis. When we measure the slope will be half. That's how we know we have to take square root of L. Okay, so that's how we know that we have to raise r to the power of 3 and t to the power of 2. So t square is proportional to r cube. It comes from this. This intercept over here will tell you the constant of proportionality, half log k. So when log of r is equal to 0, then log of t will be equal to log of k, whatever it is, you'll get this proportionality constant. Okay. So this is how Kepler came to know that t square is proportional to r cube. And in fact, whenever you do any experiment, if you have two variables, you want to find out the relationship between them, the moment you get some kind of curve like this or like that, try to take log of both the sides or both the variables and plot it. The slope will tell you which power you need to raise it to. Okay, one final thing and then we will stop. It's already like 7 o'clock. Let's say you have planet 1, which is at 3 AU. It's 3 times the distance of Earth. Okay, the time it takes for this planet, you need to find that out. We know that planet 2, which is your Earth, is at 1 time the distance from the sun. We also know that the time that Earth takes is 1 year. So if you want to find out how much time does planet 1 take, we just use ratios and proportions. We know that r cube is proportional to t square. So 3 square, this will be 3 cube divided by 1 cube will be equal to x square divided by 1 square. This 3 is coming from planet 1, this 1 is coming from planet 2, this x is coming from planet 1, this 1 is coming from planet 2. So this is 9 divided by 1 is equal to x square.
27.
Will it be 27? It's going to be square root of 9. Wait, this is 27. Yes, you're right. I messed up. Okay, this is going to be square root of 27. So square root of 25 is 5. So this is going to be approximately 5 point something something. Because square root of 25 is 5, the square root of 27 will be slightly more than 5. 5.01, 5.1, something about that order. Okay, it's 7:20. I think so we can wrap this up. Thank you guys for joining me today.